Hello everyone, I'm Nur Airin binti Samsudin from University Malaysia Terengganu. So this video presentation is about empirical fisheries relationship, which is the relationship between fisheries and nutrient. Okay, first, what is fisheries? Fisheries is the science of producing fish and other aquatic resources for the purpose of providing human food at the most, and although other aims are possible such as sport or recreational fishing or obtaining ornamental fish or fish products such as fish oil. Fisheries is divided into two sectors, which is fisheries inland, aquaculture, and wild capture. Meanwhile, nutrient is a substance that provide nourishment essential for the maintenance of life and growth. And nutrients in the ocean are cycled by a process known as biological pumping. Plankton extract the nutrient out of the water surface and combine them in their organic matrix. And then when the plants die, sink and decay, the nutrient return to their dissolved state at deeper level of the ocean. Upwelling process distribute nutrient in water, become productive and more food for the fish. The sources of nutrient are natural sources, sewage treatment plants, septic system, sediment, animal manure, commercial fertilizer, and atmospheric nitrogen. The most common problem in fisheries nutrient management, which is pond water quality. Pond water quality is an abundance of nutrient, but it leads to excessive aquatic weeds and algae growth. The benefit of the algae is it provides more food to zooplankton and block much of sunlight from reaching the bottom of the pond. But then the problem are eventual algae die off or crash, and large amount of dead organic matter, and it increase the total amount of decomposition. We can remove the existing nutrient by cutting or raking aquatic weed, or remove the decomposed organic matter, or use aluminium sulfate to clear up the muddy water. Nutrition in fish plays a critical role in intensive aquaculture because it influences not only production costs but also fish growth, health, and waste production. It is important component for the whole production system, and it also important for the world economic and species specific formulation. So here is the essential ingredient. There are 5 types of nutrients, which are protein, minerals, vitamin, lipid, and carbohydrate. And here are the example of the protein sources, which is they are come from animal protein, plant protein, soybean, algae, duckweed, and cottonseed meal. Protein is essential, which is it is composed of amino acid and used for fish growth. Protein also important component in diet, whereas the more quantity good protein used, the higher the amount of the fingerling produced. Protein are formed by linkage of individual amino acid, although more than 200 amino acids occur in nature, but only about 20 amino acids are common. Of these, 10 are essential, which is indispensable amino acid that cannot be synthesized by fish. Of these 10 essential amino acid that must be supplied by the diet, lysine and methionine are often the first limiting amino acid. Fish feeds prepared with plant protein, such as soybean meal, are typically low in methionine. Meanwhile, fish feed manufactured with bacteria or yeast protein are often deficient in both methionine and lysine, and therefore, this amino acid must be supplemented to diet when these sources of protein are used to replace the fish meal. Factors that affecting protein requirement are size of fish, natural food, protein quality, and protein ratio, and the result of these factors are low growth rate and undersized fish. Protein requirements are generally higher for the smaller as well as early life stage fish. As fish grow larger, their protein requirement usually decrease. Protein requirement also vary with rearing environment, which is water temperature and water quality, as well as the genetic composition and feeding rate of the fish. Protein is used for fish growth if adequate level of fat and carbohydrate, which is energy, are present in the diet. If not, the more expensive protein can be used for energy and life support rather than growth. Protein are composed of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen and other elements. And fish are capable of using a high protein diet, but as much as 65% of the protein can be lost to the environment. Most nitrogen is excreted as ammonia from the gill of fish, and only 10% is excreted as solid waste. Eutrophication, which is nutrient enrichment of surface water due to excess nitrogen from fish farm effluent, can be a significant water quality concern for fish farmer, and appropriate feeding strategy and waste management practice are essential to protect downstream water quality. Lipids, which is fats, are high energy nutrient that can be utilized to partially spare substitute for protein. Lipids have about twice the energy density of protein and carbohydrate. Lipids typically make up about 7 to 15% of fish diet, supply essential fatty acid, and serve as transporter for fat-soluble vitamin. A recent trend in fish feed is to use higher level of lipid in the diet. While increasing dietary lipids can help reduce the high cost of feed by partially sparing protein in the feed, problems such as excessive fat deposition in the liver can decrease fish health, quality, and shelf life of the final product. So in the body, high unsaturated fatty acids are component of cell membrane in the form of phosphoglyceride or phospholipid, especially in neural tissue of the brain and eye. They serve as precursor of steroid hormone and the highly active eicosanoid produced from 20 carbon of high unsaturated fatty acid, according to Sargent et al. 19 and 95. Eicosanoids are responsible for blood clotting, immunological and inflammatory response, renal function, cardiovascular tone, neural function, and other function. A diet deficient in essential fatty acid reduce weight gain, but usually after an extended off period. This is due to mobilization of essential fatty acid from endogenous tissue lipid. Fatty acid can be a saturated fatty acid, which is no double bond, or polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is more than 2 double bond, or highly unsaturated fatty acid, which is more than 4 double bond. Fish typically require fatty acid of the omega-3 and 6 families. Most of the marine fish and algae oil are naturally high in omega-3 highly unsaturated fatty acid and are excellent source of lipid for the manufacture of fish diet. Why fish need the energy? So fish need the energy for the fish growth, fish reproduction, osmoregulation, for their nervous system, for the chemical reaction and energy reserve. Fish eat to satisfy their energy demand, and it requires less energy than land mammals, and the factor altering energy requirement is physiological activity, environment factor, diet composition, water temperature, fish species, and fish size and age. Carbohydrates such as starch and sugar are the least expensive sources of energy for fish diet. And although it's not essential, but carbohydrates are included in aquaculture diet to reduce feed costs and for their binding activity during feed manufacturing. Dietary starch are useful in the extraction manufacture of floating feed, and cooking starch during the extraction process make it more biologically available to fish. And in fish, carbohydrates are stored as glycogen that can be mobilized to satisfy energy demand. They are a major energy source for mammals but are not used efficiently by fish. For example, mammals can extract about 4 calories of energy from 1 gram of carbohydrate, whereas fish can only extract about 1.6 calories from the same amount of carbohydrate. Fish can use up to about 20% of dietary carbohydrate. Carbohydrates of various size and complexity are synthesized by plant via photosynthesis. Cellulose and other fibrous carbohydrates are found in the structural component of plant and are indigestible to monogastric, which is simple stomach animal, including fish. In fact, the amount of crude fiber in fish feed is usually less than 7% of the diet to limit the amount of undigested material entering the culture system. Soluble carbohydrates such as starch are primary energy reserve found in seed, tuber, and other plant structure. And animal tissues such as liver and muscle contain small concentration of soluble carbohydrate in the form of glycogen, which is structurally similar to starch. Vitamins are organic compounds necessary in the diet to support normal fish growth and health. They are often not synthesized by fish and must be provided in the diet. The two groups of vitamins are water-soluble and fat-soluble. Water-soluble vitamins include B vitamin and vitamin C. And all of these, vitamin C probably is the most important because it is a powerful antioxidant and it enhances the immune system of fish and shrimp. While fat-soluble vitamins include vitamin A, D, E, and K, and all of these, vitamin E receive the most attention for its important role as an antioxidant. As a feed ingredient, vitamin E and C also inhibit dietary lipid oxidation, thus helping to improve the shell life. And the deficiency of each vitamin has specific symptoms, but reduced growth is the most common symptom of any vitamin deficiency. Bent backbone symptom known as scoliosis and dark coloration may result from the deficiencies of ascorbic acid and folic acid. And this is the example of the major class of group vitamin and their function. Minerals are inorganic elements necessary in the diet for normal body function. They can be divided into two groups, which is macrominerals and microminerals, based on the quantity required in the diet and the amount present on fish. And fish can absorb many minerals directly from the water through their gills and skin, allowing them to compensate to some extent for mineral deficiency in their diet. Common dietary macrominerals are calcium, sodium, chloride, potassium, chlorine, sulfur, phosphorus, and magnesium. These minerals regulate osmotic balance and aid in bone formation and integrity. Common microminerals are iron, copper, chromium, iodine, manganese, zinc, and selenium. These trace minerals are required in small amount as component in enzyme and hormone system. Feeding rates and frequency are in a part of function of the fish, while the small larval fish and fry need to be fed with a high protein diet frequently and usually in excess, because small fish have a high energy demand and must eat nearly continuously and be fed almost hourly. And feeding small fish in excess is not as much of a problem as overfeeding larger fish because small fish require only a small amount of feed relative to the volume of water in the culture system. As fish grow, feeding rate, frequency, and feed protein should be reduced. However, rather than switching to a lower protein diet, feeding less may allow the grower to use the same feed which is protein level throughout the grow out of period, thereby simplifying the feed inventory and storage. Okay, size of fish feed is very important because feed is available in a variety of size ranging from fine crumble for small fish to large, which is half inchy or larger pellet. The pellet size should be approximately from 20 to 30% of the size of the fish mouth gape. Feeding too small a pellet result in inefficient feeding because more energy is used in finding and eating more pellet. Conversely, pellets that are too large will depress feeding can in the extreme cause choking. Commercial fish diet are manufactured as either extruded, which is floating, or pressure pellet, which is sinking feed. And both floating and sinking feed can produce satisfactory growth, but some fish species prefer floating, others sinking. For the example, shrimp will not accept a floating feed, but most of the fish species can be trained to accept a floating pellet. Extruded feed are more expensive due to the higher manufacturing costs, and usually it is advantageous to feed a floating because the farmer can directly observe the feeding intensity of their fish and adjust their feeding rates accordingly. And it can determine whether feeding rates are too low or too high is important in maximize fish growth and feed use efficiency. Because some of the feed is expensive, feed conservation ratio or feed efficiency are important calculation for the grower. They can be used to determine if feed is being used as efficiency as possible. Feed conservation ratio is calculated as the weight of the feed fish divided by the weight of fish growth. For example, if fish are fed 10 pound of feed and then exhibit a 5 pound weight gain, the FCR is 10 divided by 5 equal to 2. Commercial fish feed is usually purchased by large farms as bulk feed in truckloads and stored in outside bin. Smaller farms often buy prepared feed in 50-pound bag, and the bag feed should be kept out of direct sunlight and as cool as possible. It is because vitamin, protein, and lipid are especially heat sensitive and can be readily denatured by high storage temperature. While high moisture stimulate mold growth and feed decomposition. So we need to avoid unnecessary handling and damage to the feed bags that could break the pellets and create fine, which is powder that will not be consumed by fish. Feed should not be stored longer than 90 to 100 days and should be inventoried regularly. And the bags of the pellet should not be stacked more than 10 high because the excessive weight from the upper bags will crush pellets in lower bags, creating the excess fine. While the older feed should be used first, and all feed should be regularly inspected for mold prior to feeding. All moldy feed should be discarded immediately, while the mice, rat, and other pests should be strictly controlled in the feed storage because they consume and contaminate feed and can transmit the disease. We need to feed fish properly. If not, the water quality become poor and the growth rate of fish is slower.